2024 is a momentous year for Canada already. Justin Trudeau is in free fall. You know, I compared the latest polling on Trudeau in Canada, obviously, with the latest polling for Donald Trump in Canada. Let me say that again. Trump's approval rating in Canada is 33%, whereas Justin Trudeau in the latest polls, and you choose it, whether it's Nanos or David Coletto's Abacus, he's at about 23. Donald Trump is more popular or has more approval in Canada, left-wingistan, than Justin Trudeau himself. So many things going on. The rebuke by the courts of Trudeau's invocation of martial law, just tremendous. I think Canada is rising up, talking about things we've never talked before. For example, the successful motion in the House of Commons to revise immigration numbers. I wouldn't have imagined that. That said, Canada is a smallish country in a big, big world. And of course, while it's deeply important to us that we rid ourselves of Justin Trudeau at the earliest convenience, and by the way, he legally could stretch out his term as late as 2026, God forbid, I think it's fair to say, and I don't think it's disrespecting of our country to say, that what happens in November 2024 in the United States of America, and I refer specifically to the presidential election, what happens in the presidential election in the United States of America this November will have a greater impact on Canada than perhaps anything that will be decided within our own borders. And if that goes for Canada, it goes doubly for other places in the world like Russia, Ukraine, Iran, China, Taiwan, you name it. People always say this is the most important election in a generation. They always say it, but is it actually ever as true as it is now? Well, that's one of the many things we're going to talk about with our next guest, our favorite America-ophile, which makes sense given that he is an American, is our friend Ben Weingarten, who joins us now via Skype. Ben, great to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Ezra.
You know, there's so many things that I'd like to talk to you about. Joe Biden, who is falling apart in front of our eyes in terms of his cognitive abilities. We're starting to see pro-Democrat newspapers like the New York Times openly muse about if the guy's lost his marbles. Do you think the Democratic Party will run Joe Biden as their candidate this year, or do you think they will, at the last moment, switch him out for another candidate? I know the primary season is pretty much over, but there are ways you can replace a candidate on the ballot. Is that kind of Hail Mary pass on the table for the Democrats, or am I overstating the problems they have with Joe Biden? Is he actually a winner?
Well, first, I think it's remarkable, this special counsel report investigation into Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents, both as a senator and as vice president. And that has spurred this question of Joe Biden's obvious declining faculties, which you didn't need a federal prosecutor to tell the American people what they can see with their own eyes, starting from the basement campaign he ran in 2020 to today. But what's amazing in that report is that it notes that Joe Biden lacked, quote unquote, recall and essentially had faulty faculties dating back to 2017. So this is someone who's been in decline for a very long time. I think, to your point, the suggestion in sort of establishment outlets, including Politico, which detailed here are the various ways in which Democrats could jettison Joe Biden. When you add on the impeachment inquiry and what it reveals about the Biden family's international influence peddling schemes, add on how much age in the minds of American voters, and this is across the board, that Democrats and Republicans alike view his age and the mental decline, of course, as a proxy for that age, as being a massive problem for him. And then you factor in, as you noted and alluded to, not only these articles talking about the various machinations Democrats could engage in to smoke-filled rooms, sideline him and pick someone else to be the figurehead for the party, but add on for months now the rumblings that there are issues with Joe Biden's campaign. He's not a compelling candidate. And this is from putative allies on the Democrat side, questions about how strong candidate he can be. Plus the polls showing Donald Trump ahead of him nationally and in most of the swing states as well by substantial margins, that is beyond the margins of error, certainly. And all of that points to a very compelling case for jettisoning him. Now, whether or not Democrats will go through with that, we shall see. It certainly seems to me that if I was in the Democrat Party and the Democrat Party is very disciplined and all about following the party line ultimately, I would want Joe Biden to be the nominee through the convention. And then if you look to the Democrat rules, they can essentially, if for health reasons or otherwise he steps aside, essentially the party bosses can pick who the nominee is. That would allow them to control the process. It would allow them to potentially sidestep or work around issues around Kamala Harris being the next in line. So I've long been on record as saying I believe they will jettison Joe. And I think everything that we've seen in recent days suggests that is the case. But there are very smart analysts who argue the complete opposite of this, and that Joe Biden is the man they're going to drag to the finish line. I think, if nothing else, this special counsel report that has dropped and the questions about the president's mental acuity, which again have been obvious for all to see for years now, if nothing else, it provides Democrats optionality if they really believe that he's going to be a loser in 2024.
Yeah. We alluded to some of the matters in that special prosecutor's report. He couldn't remember when he was vice president. Something very personal, he couldn't remember when his son passed away. Now, when that was revealed, Joe Biden leaned into and said, I'm outraged that they would talk about my dear son like that. I miss him and I love him. And that was his attempt to take the energy and the emotion of, holy cow, you forgot that, into they're attacking me personally. And I don't know if it worked. I think it, if anything, brought more attention to it. Like, this guy couldn't remember the most basic things when he was a senator, things like that. But I don't think we needed an official person to say that. I think we've all, like every single human, even if you're a Democrat, has seen enough clips of him just saying inexplicable, unintelligible things. And it's going to get, I think it's going to accelerate. He's going to have these Biden moments all the time. Here's a question I have for you. Who do you, I think it's going to happen. I think they're going to get him to the nomination, celebrate him, and then in sorrow, more than anything, he will probably announce, or maybe Dr. Jill Biden will probably announce that he's stepping aside for family reasons or health. It'll be very loving, and they'll have lots of kudos and tributes to the man, and it'll be almost like a living funeral for him. Everyone will send in accolades. And then and it's so important. I mean, you know the rules better than me, but it is not a primary process after that. It is not a let's go and talk to the people. It's what the bosses say. So they don't have to go through, well, who came in second? They don't have to go to the vice president. I think the only person more unlikable, I mean, Joe Biden actually has a likability. You can disagree with him, you can see he's falling apart, but he's got a likability. Who do you think they would pick as his hand-picked successor if we're going down that road? And I know this is speculative, but I think as we're speculating, who do you think would be the savior of the party? I've got a name, but I want to hear who you think first.
Well, and also let's note, by the way, there could be a real fight here between the Biden family and the party itself, because let's not forget that Hunter Biden is facing prosecution. So what happens with if you take Joe Biden out of the equation, then what happens to potentially pardoning Hunter Biden? There are a lot of different monkey wrenches like that could be thrown into this mix. Set all that aside, to your main question, who would be the replacement? Obviously, you've had Gavin Newsom positioning himself. Of course, he hosted Xi Jinping and also visited China as well. So I guess that's sort of an attempt to burnish credentials as I'm a kind of global leader as governor of California, and he's curried favor with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's spoken favorably of him. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, has also tried to position herself accordingly. In particular, it seems that she's trying to elevate herself as trying to maintain the Democrat vote when Joe Biden is potentially struggling, particularly with Palestinian Arab voters in Dearborn. This is usually significant because the Michigan margins could be very tight. If Michigan falls to Donald Trump, that could cost Democrats the presidency. To me, I've long felt that the secret weapon for the Democrats is Michelle Obama. And I suspect that might be your pick as well. One of the reasons that I say Michelle Obama would make sense is that this allows you to skirt the Kamala Harris problem. The Kamala Harris problem being, how can the party sideline a Black woman when she was picked, in part on the identitarian kind of credentials, and you're going to enrage potentially your base if you then pick a Gavin Newsom over a Kamala Harris or a Gretchen Whitmer over a Kamala Harris. Michelle Obama allows you to sidestep that. And despite the fact that I think she is a completely non-compelling figure and that I think she would be a disastrous president of the United States, I could very well see the Democrat Party turning to her. I also believe, and I think this is being borne out, beyond the fact that if you look to virtually every single person in a prominent position in the Biden administration, that it is all holdovers from the Obama Biden administration, that this is essentially Barack Obama's third term in the way of policy. And that illustrates, that reflects the fact that this is Barack Obama's Democrat Party. It used to be that the Clintons controlled the Democrat Party. It is now an Obama-controlled Democrat Party. So who better for Barack Obama to pick than Michelle Obama for that position? Obviously, we're engaging in speculation, like you said. There are any of a number of other figures who are going to be vying hard for the seat to the extent it does become open. But to me, that would be the one that I would look to as potentially, I guess, no pun intended, but a potential trump card.